I graduated from photography college in 2009, but it was not until a few years ago that I bought my first zoom lens. It was when I started this channel. So for a period of 10 years, I was using prime lenses only. And I shot assignments all over the world. I won awards for documentary projects. I shot landscapes, products, portraits, all using nothing but a set of primes. And even now, because I'm also doing video now, but still, most of the time, I'm using primes. So that must mean that prime lenses are better than zoom lenses, right? Right? Okay, so zoom lenses zoom and prime lenses or fixed lenses don't. That's obviously the most important difference. But prime lenses do have some other advantages or benefits. Another important difference between zoom lenses and prime lenses is that prime lenses often have a wider aperture. The aperture is the hole in the lens that lets in the light. And the bigger the hole, the better it will perform in low light. And the lower the number, the wider the aperture is. And a wider aperture will also allow you to get a more blurry background. More separation between the subject and the background. Prime lenses can have apertures as wide as f1.2 or even wider, while most zoom lenses max out at 2.8. Now, some brands, because technology is advancing, some brands have been releasing zoom lenses with wider apertures. Canon, for example, has released an f2 zoom lens, but they're super expensive. So a prime lens, in my opinion, will still give you more value for money. Also because usually they're smaller and lighter, and in a lot of cases, they're also sharper, because there's less glass elements in the lens. So what you could say is that a cheaper prime lens will give you the same quality as a super expensive zoom lens. And not always, of course, I'm overgeneralizing it now, but in a lot of cases it's true. But then again, I also think that sharpness is overrated. I don't like super sharp images. I quite often actually soften my images because I don't like that super sharp digital look. And you know, all that pixel peeping, comparing images at 200% zoomed in, it's so useless. But, I mean, who am I? What usually does it for me is the price of a prime lens. Because I like to look at the f1.8 primes and I don't know, I think they give you a lot of value for money. If you start looking at f1.4 or f1.2 primes, well, then it also gets more expensive, of course. Okay. And then zoom lenses. Well, zoom lenses zoom, which means that they are super useful. If you're a sports photographer, for example, and you want to take a photo of a race car in the distance. Well, with a zoom lens, you can get that shot. But in just milliseconds, you can also zoom out and get a shot of that same race car right in front of you. So a zoom lens is super versatile. And switching lenses doesn't take super long, but in that case, not super long is too long. You know what I mean? In some cases, there's just no time to switch lenses. But what's the best lens then? A zoom lens or a prime lens? Well, look, you might have heard some photographers say that a zoom lens will make you lazy because you can just zoom in or out and you know, you don't think about what you actually want to show. You just zoom in or out and that's it. You don't think about the story or about what you actually want to show. And it's kind of true. The thing is, just because you can zoom doesn't mean that you shouldn't move your feet. Because let's say you're a travel photographer and you see an interesting object or subject in the distance, let's say 50 meters, and you have a 24 to 70 millimeter zoom. Well, taking a photo of that object all the way zoomed in at 70 millimeters will give you a completely different photo compared to if you'd walk up to that subject and take a photo all the way zoomed out at 24 millimeters. You know, zoomed out, you'll get the sometimes exaggerated perspective of a wider focal length, and if you zoom in, you'll get the compressed look of a longer focal length. And of course, you also have all the millimeters in between. But just because some people forget to move their feet if they are using a zoom lens doesn't mean that a prime lens is better than a zoom lens, or vice versa. 100% not. It just depends. What's your style? What type of subjects do you like to photograph? If you absolutely need the widest aperture possible because you're a low light shooter, then well, a prime lens is probably the better option for you. But also remember that having a wide aperture doesn't mean that you have to shoot at the maximum aperture all the time. Not at all. only if you really have to, in low light for example, or if you think that shooting at a wide aperture and blurring out the background completely will add value to the story. You know, I see some people, they buy a 1.2 prime lens and they shoot everything at 1.2 because they think it will look better that way. But that's not true. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. You know, it's only in those cases when the lens that you have won't allow you to get the shot that you need or want that you can say, well, I think a prime lens in this case is better for me, or vice versa. Sports photographers, for example, if your subject moves super fast all the time and you don't have time to move around, get a zoom lens, of course. And also, just use what you like, what you prefer. Some photographers prefer prime lenses, some photographers prefer zoom lenses, some prefer both. That's all fine. If you don't need something specific like an f1.2, then use whatever the fuck you want. Just use what works for you. And you know, even a bad zoom lens, a cheap zoom lens, will give you great shots because it's the person behind the camera that makes the photo and not the lens. And like I said, sharpness and image quality, it's overrated. People have to stop comparing images at 200% zoomed in their Photoshop or whatever because it's useless. I've seen terrible photos being shot with zoom lenses and I've seen terrible photos being shot with prime lenses. It's the person behind the camera. Just get the right tool for the job and you'll be fine. And you know, just find out what works for you. Okay, I can feel that this is starting to turn into a rant. Maybe, you know? Thank you so much for watching and see you in the next one.
I'm a videographer and I'm on the verse, so when I shoot my shot, I don't miss. I'm gonna take the shot, take the shot, take the shot. You know I'm gonna take the shot, take the shot, take the shot.